Hey everybody, John Skiba here from the Consumer Warrior YouTube channel, and today we're going to tackle kind of a somewhat more complicated process. We're going to talk about Chapter 13 bankruptcy and how you can determine approximately how much you're going to have to pay your creditors through the Chapter 13 process. But if this is your first time here to my YouTube channel, please click subscribe, check on that little bell. That way you'll be notified each and every week when I put out new videos that'll help you deal with your serious debt problems. All right, let's talk about Chapter 13 bankruptcy. Now, most people that file bankruptcy file Chapter 7. Chapter 7 is a relatively short process, takes about 4 to 5 months to work through, and you get a complete discharge. In most cases, there's no payments that are made to your creditors. You just file it, the debts go away, and you move on with life kind of thing. However, you do have to qualify for Chapter 7, and they base that upon your household size and your income. It's called the means test. And a number of people do not qualify for a Chapter 7 because their income is too high. They have to look at different options like Chapter 13. Chapter 13 is also really beneficial if you're facing like home foreclosure or if you're behind on your house payment. You need to get that caught up. Chapter 13 can be an option. Now, Chapter 13 is a whole different beast altogether. It's much longer. If your income is too high, and that's the reason why you're filing a Chapter 13, you're going to be in a 60-month plan. So for 5 years, you're going to be dealing with a Chapter 13 bankruptcy. My job as a bankruptcy attorney here in the state of Arizona, I help put together all the documents. And one of the most important documents in the Chapter 13 case is the Chapter 13 plan. This is where we propose a plan to your creditors and to the court where we're showing here's how much you're going to pay your creditors over that 5-year period. The idea behind a Chapter 13 is essentially you're going to do your best. You're going to do your best to pay the credit cards, the medical bills for 5 years. And then after you go through that 5-year process, if there's any balance left on those credit cards, personal loans, medical bills, any balance that's left over after 60 months is eliminated at that point or discharged through this process. I have a number of people say, I want to do the 13. I want to try and pay at least something to my creditors. How much do I have to pay? Then I give like the most unsatisfactory answer ever. And it's always, it depends. Depends because it's very fact specific and we need a lot of information to be able to develop how much it is that you're going to have to pay your creditors. But there's 2 factors that we look at when determining how much you're going to end up paying your creditors on a monthly basis through the Chapter 13 process. Now, it's important to understand it is a set amount. It's not something where it varies from month to month or we're reevaluating it each month. It's something where we propose a plan and it will say you're paying X amount of dollars for the next 5 years that you're going to pay it. So the 2 biggest factors, first one is income and expenses, and then the second one is what we call the value of your non-exempt assets. Let's talk about income and expenses. So we're essentially looking at your budget. We look at how much you make and we take an average over the last 6 months prior to the filing of your bankruptcy. We take that number and we also look at your monthly budget and then we look to see is there any money left over. One important thing to note, in the state of Arizona, like your car payments, they're paid through this plan as well. So when I put together a budget, I'm not including your car payment because that's going to be paid through your case. But we look at income, we look at monthly expenses, and then we look to see is there any money left over. Now, in most Chapter 13 cases, I can tell you that number that's left over is typically what the plan payment is. And so if you're trying to do this at home, you might say, okay, there is $425 left over after I pay all my bills. That's typically what most people end up paying to their creditors during the 60-month process. Now, it's important to note that there are some limitations on your expenses. There is some limitations based upon some IRS national guidelines. And I should tell you this, most people think, oh, it's going to be something where it's beans and toast for the next 5 years. It's not. And truthfully, most of the budget allotments that they allow are more than most people spend. For example, I'm recording this in January of 2023. In the state of Arizona, they allow about $80 per household member per month for clothing. So if you have a household of 4, you're looking at $320 a month allotment for clothing. That's not to say that they're giving you that amount, but they allow you to include that as a deduction from your income, which reduces your overall disposable income that would have to go to your creditors. Whether you spend that or not, you're allowed to take that specific allotment. We go through your budget, we make sure we apply what the limitations are to that, and then we look to see how much is left over. But we're not done. The second part of this is that we have to look at your assets and determine if you have any non-exempt assets. Assets, the way we determine the values, we take the asset, how much it's worth, and then we subtract any liens, like if you have a loan against like a car or a mortgage, and then the difference between those 2 is your equity, the amount of the asset that you actually own. So for example, let's say that you have a vehicle and it's worth $10,000. Let's say that you own it outright. Vehicle's paid off. In the state of Arizona, there's a $6,000 exemption that we can apply to that. So if we didn't have that exemption, then you'd have $10,000 of non-exempt assets because that vehicle's worth $10,000. However, if we applied the $6,000 exemption to it, now you only have $4,000 of non-exempt assets. The reason why this whole calculation is important important is because we have to determine what's the total amount of the non-exempt assets. What's the total value there? Because we have to run a hypothetical analysis as if you were filing a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, if the court was actually taking assets and selling them and making a distribution to your creditors. I know this gets kind of complicated, but what the bankruptcy attorney is looking at is how much would your creditors receive if you were to file a Chapter 7 bankruptcy? Because the law says that your creditors have to get as much as they would have gotten in your Chapter 7 and your Chapter 13. Essentially, the idea is your creditors shouldn't be harmed because you chose Chapter 13 over Chapter 7. So if we run that whole analysis of exemptions, non-exempt assets, equity, all that, and let's say we determine that in your Chapter 7 case, your creditors would have received a distribution of $15,000. As your attorney, I help you prepare this plan where your creditors will receive at least that much. So the two things that we're looking at, again, are disposable income and expenses, how much is left over, and then the value of your non-exempt assets. And we have a formula that we work through to provide that, so where we come up with a specific number that you pay for 60 months, and then once the bankruptcy case is completed, any balance that's still owed on your unsecured credit cards, medical bills, those types of things, they will go away completely. I know that's really kind of complicated. There's a lot going on there, but like I said, if you're just trying to ballpark it before you talk to an attorney, look at your monthly income, look at your monthly expenses. When you're calculating that, you do not include like credit card payments, medical bills, all the things that are going to go away. You don't include that in the process. To do a Chapter 13, you must have regular income. It doesn't really matter where it comes from, but it has to be regular income source. You can't be unemployed unless you're having income come in from somewhere else. If you have specific questions and you're in the state of Arizona, that's where I practice law, I'd be happy to go over your situation and we can go into a more detailed analysis about how Chapter 13 would impact you and help you estimate what that plan payment would look like. Check out my information below. Thanks for watching today.